Welcome to the Elk Talk Podcast with Randy Newberg and Corey Jacobson. Presented by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation.
The goal is, what little you and I know about elk hunting, we share with people.
I've got an elk building, it's like 120 yards away. What do I do? First off, the thought would never cross my mind when an elk's being 120 yards away to call anybody on a cell phone.
All elk?
All the time? Only elk?
Only elk.
Well, it's us having conversations, so we usually go down some rabbit holes, but
If you hunt with Corey Jacobson, you will find the landscape is full of rabbit holes. We're just going to make this up as we go.
and you look at it like, oh, that's a target-rich environment. But if you're trying to single one out, a solo target there is much easier to go into than a big group.
We record everything, so there's no BSing, no lying, no faking it with us.
Did we hit the record
I thought I forgot to hit the record button. If you want to know something about elk hunting, this probably isn't the podcast to listen to. Should we give them a list of all the other podcasts where they might learn something? Morning, Corey.
Good morning, Randy.
How you doing? Looks like you're at the office in a studio or something. You got a big elk picture in the back. You got a Euro mount up above your head.
Well, you said you were going to start videoing these, so I thought I'd better look like I'm somewhat professional instead of sitting there in my boxers and my tank top.
Well, I'm sitting in my studio, and they put a whole brand new remote-controlled light system in here that's all up in the ceiling. And they all have it on their phone, but no one bothered to put it on my phone.
Nice.
So I've been standing on a stool trying to kill myself, hitting all the power buttons up there. So when you logged in and you're wondering, what's Randy doing over there? All that complaining and
There was
cussing and
heavy breathing and sighing and all sorts of stuff going on.
Yeah, well, I was trying to figure out how to use these lights. So, folks, I apologize. Now that we record these in video also, it probably looks like I'm in the dark or something.
No, it looks good on my end.
That's how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm an accountant.
I'm sure it was no accident your guys didn't give you access to control anything in that room because they know what would happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure they said, you know what? We'll just do this for him. Because if we put this on his phone, first he's going to be mad that we put something on his phone. He won't know how to use it. He'll be in here fidgeting with it, and he'll probably ruin the whole thing. So, yeah. Oh, well. But how you been?
Doing good. We've thought we had spring, but turned out we aren't quite ready for spring here, I guess. We've been in the 40s this week and got rain here and actually snow up higher. And this is mid-May.
It snowed right down to the valley floor when I woke up yesterday morning. Last Monday, they closed Bozeman Pass coming west.
Wow.
Yeah, there was so much snow. I had out my house towards mountains. I think we had 4 or 5 inches that Monday morning. So that's how it is living in the Rockies.
That's right. I've been out picking some morel mushrooms, and I got excited because we had decent moisture and then had some really nice weather. It was in the 70s, and I thought, oh, this is going to be perfect for the mushrooms. And as soon as they started popping up, it got cold again, and they've kind of went dormant a little bit. So hopefully they come back around, and we still have another couple weeks of good morel picking.
Well, I'm going on a bear hunt tomorrow. Those mountain tough guys, Dustin and Lyle and Nate. And they've been working out all winter. I've been on the road, traveling all over the place. I've been back in the gym some, but I'm trying to redo my 9-week program I built with them. I'm only in week 4. So if I'm perish up there, you'll have to take over the podcast.
Well, fortunately, I don't think bear shape is quite as demanding as elk shape, which isn't quite as demanding as sheep shape. So you should be okay. Week 4 of your program should have you in bear shape. So
okay. Well, they're going through this whole, we're going to pack in this, pack in that. I'm like, cool, fine by me. So I'm swinging by Idaho Falls tomorrow. I'm grabbing 4 llamas. So I'm
bring all you want.
Yeah, like, how are you going to pack that big stove and that cot and everything in here? Just watch me.
Yep.
It's called Mac and Quigley and whoever else is in the string. That's who's going to do that for me. But you draw any elk tag yet? I flunked out and you.
Yeah, I drew Montana General, but that's it so far. We've got Wyoming coming out here anytime. And
next week, yeah. Next week, I think we find out from Wyoming on elk and Nevada for everything. It's kind of funny. I haven't drawn a tag yet. Well, if I look at the things I've applied for, the probabilities, I pretty much got what I asked for.
Yep. Yeah, the odds were not in your favor. No, that's funny. We always hear people complain. I've applied in Idaho for 30 years and haven't drawn anything. We need a point system. And it's like, well, a point system isn't going to help you when you're applying for a 2% draw on hunt. Point system's not going to get you any closer either.
So I'll still be lucky. We always talk about how lucky we are to live in states where you can go hunting. Elk hunting over the counter. So I'm sure no one's going to shed any tears for me if I don't draw an out-of-state elk tag this year.
No.
That's fine. I'm sure I'll find some people who need a camp cook or something. So have llamas, we'll travel.
Are you applying in Idaho for deer or elk?
No, I applied for sheep. Don't ask me what. For about 20 years, I applied for moose in Idaho because you guys make people decide. And I kind of like how you guys, if you apply for moose, you can't apply for anything else. If you apply for sheep, you can't apply for anything else. If you apply for goat, you can't apply for anything else. So I burned my opportunity with this sheep tag. I was sure I was drawing this bighorn sheep tag in Idaho. Don't ask. It's probably the second or third time I've applied for sheep there. Usually I did moose, and then for the last 5 or 6 years, I switched back to doing the deer elk pronghorn draw. And I've never drawn anything in Idaho, so I thought, well, maybe I just got to try a little harder.
Yeah,
send them a little more money.
Maybe you got to try for a harder to draw one.
Yeah. What is that deadline? June 4th or 5th?
June 5th, I think, for big game for deer, elk, and antelope in Idaho. So I did the same. I applied for moose, so I'm not able to apply for deer or elk, but got my kiddos. I was actually just looking through the regulations this morning and trying to figure out hunts to apply them for. So
what do we got left for elk draws? Last week, or just this week, the other day, the Oregon deadline came and went.
Yep.
Nevada deadline last week came and went. So you guys in Idaho are about all that's left in limited entry draws, Corey.
In the West, yep. I think Idaho, and it used to be nice when Idaho had over-the-counter for non-residents, true over-the-counter, because you could go through all the other draws and you could actually still apply for Idaho too, and then, find out a little later and then still buy a tag. But now it's kind of, if you haven't got a tag yet, the draws in Idaho are kind of your last chance.
Yeah. So without an elk tag other than Montana, there's still hope. I got Wyoming next week, and I got Nevada the following week, but I don't even have double-digit odds in any of the units I applied for. So it's kind of foolish to be here thinking about, wow, I'm going to hunt this way with my Wyoming elk tag. And Marcus heard me planning all this stuff the other day. He's like, oh, did you apply for something? Did you apply for a general tag? You think you got good odds? No, I think I got like 3%. And he just looked at me like, you've spent the last 2 hours planning a Wyoming elk hunt on 3% odds. You're an optimist, man.
That's right.
But even without all that, I'm going to hunt Montana, obviously, and I'm going to give it a hard effort in archery season this year. Last year, I had a limited entry rifle tag, and so I didn't hunt it very hard in archery, wanting to do that rifle tag. I don't know if it's age or stupidity, senility. You probably see me drooling in my Cheerios here someday, but I passed so many bulls last year and ended up with an empty sack. But I had a lot of fun. It allowed me to hunt, I don't know, 10 extra days, probably.
Yeah.
Something like
You'd
that.
been done on opening day if you'd have pulled the trigger. So
I know.
Wouldn't have got to enjoy it near as much.
That's true. So I don't know. I wonder how many other people kind of think about it that way. Of, well, if I shoot one right now, and it's like in Montana, it's a 5-week season. What am I going to do? Kim's going to make me do housework or something. fix the wash. Oh, speaking of which, this has nothing to do with Elk.
Here we go.
She's in Oregon helping take care of her mom. Well, out in front of our front steps where the sidewalk is starting to raise a little bit, we have all this hardy plank face that faces you as you walk towards the step. So underneath each step is this concrete hardy plank. Well, the bottom one, as the steps heaved a little bit, it cracked. And it happened last fall. She's like, when you get off the road, you need to call someone to fix that. Okay. All right. Well, my brother comes out here. He built his own house. He builds, when he's not logging, he builds log homes. So he's like the handiest guy you ever see. So he leaves. And I'm like, you know what? For Mother's Day, I'm going to fix those steps. Even though she's not here, I'm going to fix those steps and send her a picture. So I did. I spent all day on Mother's Day working to replace that bottom part of those steps. And it looks so beautiful. I send her a picture and she texts me back, tell Jason thank you, my brother.
Yep.
All right. So anyhow.
You're the one that set the precedence there. You're the one that established that. So you can't complain.
I know. In a moment of weakness, I wanted to flex my handy skills a little bit, and now it's going to cost me. She's going to want me to go cut firewood or something in September.
Well, you dodged a bullet. She knew it was Jason and not you. Otherwise, she'd start expecting you to do it. So just be like, yep, I did it, but Jason got credit, so I'm not expected to do anything in the future.
Oh, yeah, I did tell her that night. I'm like, well, I did that. And she paused like, no way.
No.
And then she's kind of like, oh, I'm sorry. Like she's humoring me. So I still don't think I've convinced her that I did it. But anyhow, that's why I don't shoot stuff on opening day unless it's really remarkable. Because I'll get, there'll be some expectation. I'll have to clean out a filing cabinet or, change the well filter or whatever. I don't do that at hunting. So awful lot going on in the conservation and public land world. Hey, did you see that?
Kidding.
Right now, there's a big, I'm always looking for when are the planets aligning politically for something that would be a victory. Like 2011, when the planets aligned and we got congressional delisting of wolves in Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. I'm like, we need another one of those moments right now. And I don't know, by the time this gets published, it'll probably be too late, but we are so close to having suppressors taken off the NFA list that you could just go buy one.
Wow.
But unfortunately, we got a couple people who live in big urban areas who ran on I'm your Second Amendment friend. And now they're getting squishy. Like, well, I'm just kidding. And it's like, because we're only like 2 votes short of getting that on the amendment. They're using the budget process to circumvent the whole 60 votes you need in the Senate. But we got a couple squishy people there that forgot what they ran on in the election.
Yeah.
So, but that'd be cool if suppressors didn't cost a $200 tax stamp and you didn't have to, take a blood sample and I go through chemotherapy and 47 vaccines just to prove you're worthy of a suppressor.
Yeah. So tell me the latest on the public land stuff, because I've been seeing a whole bunch of nonsense on that.
I was hoping we could just talk about positive things like suppressors.
Let's just touch on the. I mean, that's I think, but aren't the public land pieces also attached to the budget part?
They are, and so how the budget part works, the House kind of has to come up with the budget. That's where it originates. So all the House committees are working on their parts of the budget. They get folded up into the House budget. Then it goes to the Senate. The Senate, they do their budget. And if there are differences, which there always are, then they got to have a reconciliation process and they got to come up with the same exact version that they both go back to their respective chambers and vote on. And if it passes, then it goes to the president. So right now, what's going on over in the House side is all of the subcommittees or all the committees are preparing their budgets, and they're throwing all these crazy amendments out there. And unfortunately, last Friday, a congressman from Nevada, Mark Amade, got a budget, or got in his House, I think his Natural Resources, got an amendment passed to sell a bunch of land. Originally, it was, well, let's just sell some land around Reno and Vegas and St. George, Utah. Well, then, if you read the way it's worded, it opens up the sale of about another 400,000 acres in Nevada. And it passed. Right now, it's going to be included in the House version of the budget.
So we're talking, we've got a House budget and a Senate budget, and that's what they operate on for the year. That's their money that that committee gets to operate on.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
the agencies under their purview.
Right.
Yep.
So then you get somebody who's in that committee who says, I don't agree with this, but if you let me have my way here on this thing, I'll add it in and then I'll vote for it. So something that may not even have anything to do with the budget, such as a suppressor or such as the sale of public lands, gets added in there basically as a carrot dangled to say, well, I'll vote for it if I get my way on this. And everybody has to agree with what I want here in order for me to approve your budgets.
Yeah. And so if you wonder why the U.S. budget is so screwed up, I mean, this is as an accountant, you don't need to be a CPA to look at the U.S. budget and say, how do we end up in a situation where every year the budget deficit for each year's budget, the gap is growing and growing and growing, adding to the U.S. debt? Well, that process you just explained, that horse trading, is how we get there. We got a Congress that just, there's no accountability for them. And
why? It's not, they aren't even connected. The budget shouldn't be approved based on you giving me my way. I'll vote. I don't agree with it, but I'll vote for it if I get my way on something completely unrelated.
Yeah. It was interesting when they were trying to, right now we're working on a continuing resolution because they just forget that they're supposed to have a budget in place by October 1st of every year. And so they just pass these, what's called continuing resolutions, which is keep spending the way you have been, and we'll worry about it later. We'll keep putting ink in the printing press while you guys continue to operate as you have been. This whole thing about the public land stuff is part of it. The guise is let's lower the cost of housing, even though every time they've tried it, it's never worked. When they've sold some public land around Vegas and other places, I get that it's a great marketing pitch right now with how expensive housing is, but history says it never works out that way.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is they're saying, we're going to raise a bunch of money for the U.S. Treasury to help offset the gap in the budget. Okay. These same people had a chance last budget cycle. There was a bill that said, hey, it's about time the hard rock mining industry starts paying a royalty. Like oil and gas companies pay a 16% royalty on everything they pump out of the ground. Coal mines pay an 8% royalty on everything they take out of federal lands. Gold, silver, copper, zinc, and lithium, anything that's a hard rock. I don't know if lithium would fall in that, but anyhow, they pay 0%. Like gold is at all-time high prices. And we have a lot of foreign-owned companies. And the reason a lot of foreign companies come and set up shop on U.S. federal lands is they avoid a royalty. It's a 0%. What I've paid for my film permits on federal lands over the last 18 years is more money than the entire copper, gold, silver, whatever. I've paid more in federal funding than all of them combined in their entire history.
Wow. Well, you're doing a lot more damage to the resource with your camera guy following along with you.
Yeah. Me and Marcus walking around out there just destroying the place. But so last budget cycle, there was a bill that says, hey, we could raise $2 to $5 billion a year if we just brought that royalty up to what we pay, what the coal guys got to pay. Oh my gosh. It was the end of the world. And you want to know one of the leading opponents to kill that bill was the same guy who said, we got to do this in Nevada. Congressman Amade, we got to sell these public lands. So in its most basic method, he was against a bill that would add, depending on, prices of minerals, on the low end, $2 billion a year to the Department of Interior, high end, $5 billion a year, and grows every year as we expand our mining and as the price of minerals goes up. So he said, I'm not in favor of that, but I'm really in favor of a one-time hit to sell a bunch of land. So,
and you just have to look at things like that and understand, or at least speculate, somebody like that probably has an investment somewhere in a gold mining corporation, or they own ownership, or they've got a really good friend who contributes a whole bunch of money to him. That royalty, instead of going to the government's going right to his campaign funds or something. Well, and the conflicts here are so blatantly obvious that it's frustrating. It's frustrating that we elect people that go in there and then they go for their own agendas rather than what's best for the public.
Yeah. So it's funny you say that. And I know this, people are probably saying, what's this got to do with elk hunting? It does have a lot to do with elk hunting because it paints the picture of these groups that want to sell elk hunting ground that we all enjoy. This is an example of how things happen. So you say, and so I looked this up. I'm like, there's this website called opensecrets.org that shows where every member of Congress gets their funding. And I'm like, man, they paid him or contributed, the one mining industry did, $200,000 to his campaign. And he's been able to defeat bills that are saving them $2 to $5 billion a year at the expense of the U.S. taxpayer. You know what? If I could go make a $200,000 investment and get a $2 to $5 billion annual return on that, you're damn right I'd be greasing those skids.
Yeah.
So if you're the mining industry, you're like, not our fault. There was a corrupt politician in Montana who got busted for trying to bribe the Montana legislature. And he just blatantly said, I've never bought a politician who wasn't for sale.
Maybe.
This guy.
I mean, we could sit here and solve all the world's problems, but nothing's ever going to get implemented. But man, if you took money out of politics, just made it so they have to volunteer their time. They don't get paid. They can't accept money. They can't spend money on a campaign. They just have to run on their principles. And how would that be?
We know how that'd work. They'd all go find. Right now, they got lucrative professions. They'd go find something. They'd get out of it. They're like, there's no money in it.
They'd probably clean up their act. They'd probably clean up their act and become drug dealers or something.
Boy, we're making a lot of friends in Congress. I got to go back again. Corey, I got to go back there again in June or July, man. I'm going to, I might get a pair of concrete shoes and thrown off the bridge. And
Randy disappeared.
Yeah, but the reason that I think it's worthwhile to talk about that is this horse trading in the budget process that you brought up and that I just gave this example of a congressperson that any listener we have, any person in America, if you said, do you want a one-time gift of, $80,000, or do you want a gift every year of $20,000 to $50,000 for the rest of your life? I'm proportionalizing all that to something maybe people can relate to. Well, if you take the $80,000 gift, within 2 years at a $50,000 gift, you'd be way ahead.
Yeah.
So, and this would be forever. So this kind of logic that gets applied to this whole budget process is really about ulterior motives. And this person has been an ideologue about, he's never asked for the federal government to sell the land to the states. He's wanted them to give it to the states. In his state, where he lives in Nevada, got 2.1 million acres at statehood, but they sold 99.5% of it to their crooked. It was a big scandal at the time because they set up shell companies and sold it to friends and everything else. So last time we gave you guys a bunch of land, you pissed it all away. And now you're saying, U.S. taxpayer, hey man, can you give us some more land? We're fresh out of inventory.
Yeah.
And so I called their state land department of what little they have left. I'm like, hey, I can't find in your administrative rule whether or not I could hunt or recreational shoot on your state land. Oh, you can't do that.
Really?
So, yeah. So even in his idea of turn a bunch of this BLM land over to the state that he lives in, right now, the little bit of land they have left, you're not allowed to hunt and shoot on it.
The state land. So the BLM, the federal land, is public. It's public. You can recreate. If it becomes state land, you lose that ability.
Exactly. So his wish of Nevada taking over all these federal lands, unless they change their laws in Nevada, or unless this guy I talked to is somehow out to lunch, you'd have all this federal land. You currently can ride ATVs, go antler collecting, go hunting, go camping. It'd move it over to a state category where you couldn't do any of that.
Man.
So anyhow,
speaking of antler collecting in Nevada,
did you find it?
We can talk. Man, it's and I whine every year that people are out there poaching the antlers, and it's my goal in Nevada. People, my wife even says, "Why do you keep going back? You go down there and you spend 4 days, and you come home and whine that all you find is four-wheeler tracks everywhere, and people have been there before the season opened, picking them all up." I go back because I am certain there's a pocket somewhere that people haven't got into. I go to a new spot. I research new spots every year, and I spend 3 or 4 days down there. I have found 2 brown antlers in 5 years in Nevada. Everything else has been picked up before you get there. So this year was no exception. The good news is I think my whining has actually made a little difference. The enforcement down there this year was, I heard that they took all of their enforcement people and made a big sweep. They just started in one part of the state and swept through the unit with everybody. The next day they were in another unit, the next day in another unit. And I've heard of several groups getting busted picking up antlers before the season this year. So, I mean, I have no problem with seasons if they'll enforce it. And that, I think hopefully that word's getting out that, hey, we're going to do something about this and we're serious about it. So,
yeah, well, I feel bad for you because we were down there helping our buddy Joel with an elk hunt last year. And Marcus is like, oh, here's an antler. And it's like, I should look around for some more of them. I'm like, nope. We're too busy packing meat and doing other stuff. I'm going to send Corey a waypoint, and maybe he'll come in here. He'll find the rest of them. So sorry if we...
You sent me a waypoint. And what was funny is I'm hiking around looking for antlers in trees, knowing that you had been there. I would scan the ground. I'm like, well, if Randy's been here, I better look in trees too. And so I was looking in trees. I was looking on the ground. And it was there had been elk in there 1 year. It looked like we found a couple really old white ones and several of them from that same year, but they didn't look like they'd been in there this year. There wasn't much sign, and the sign that was there, I did find one little 6-point that dropped late, probably after people had been in there, and he was probably moving up from the actual winter range into summer range and dropped it on the way, but yeah.
Well, Marcus found a really nice brown 6-point that someone had missed that spring.
Man.
And anyhow, I'm sorry.
We're
don't
still on the lookout.
Every time I send you a waypoint, it turns out to be a dry hole. So I can't. Either someone gets in there before you do, or I just send you some bum information. I'm not sure which.
I think the areas you have sent me, they're like a one-time thing. You just happen to be there on the year that the elk were actually there, and they don't normally hang out there because we go back and it's like, there's not even any sign in here. Like, this is just a one-off thing that Randy keeps stumbling into. So I am going to check out every waypoint you ever send me because at some point the stars are going to align and I am going to find a pocket down there that's got antlers.
Yeah. So did you see the recent article floating around that here in Montana, 3 National Guardsmen landed a helicopter on private land.
I
To
did.
pick antlers.
I did.
The fertilizer is hitting the ventilator.
Yeah.
I don't know the people involved, but I'm just scratching my head saying, how could you think it was a good idea to be on guard duty?
Land a government helicopter.
Yeah, on private land and walk around and start picking antlers on private land. Maybe the facts will come out to be different than that, but it's like so far. And there's an awful lot of people investigating it. All the facts that have been reported and all kinds of different sources and people involved all match up. So it's like,
not a good situation.
But I don't have a helicopter or access to one, Corey, where I can fly into some landlocked sections where I know there'd be a bunch of them. But
it's funny.
So,
we've flown in by plane and got dropped off before in the backcountry. I actually had a helicopter scheduled one time to take us in and fly us, not land on private land, but just to land on public land in a remote spot and drop us off. And that ended up falling through. But it's just, it's sad when when it gets to that point that you have to fly into somewhere remote. And even when we do that, we fly into these backcountry airstrips and then hike 10 miles from there, and we're still finding boot tracks. And people are just serious about it.
That's crazy. So you want to know what else I did a week ago? I went, as a CPA, you got to do 40 hours of what they call CPE, Continuing Professional Education. So I get invited to a lot of things. Like, nah. I got invited to one. It was a legal course with a bunch of attorneys there, attorney instructors, sponsored by a group that a lot of people say are way over on the conservative side. And there was a 2-hour session of my whole day there about corner crossing and what that means.
Wow.
It was eye-opening to sit through that and hear the opinion of not just the person presenting, but all the other attorneys in the group that are, in attendance and where it's at and what it means. And most of them knew that I have these platforms. And I'm like, well, Mr. CPA, what do you think? I'm like, I'm here taking notes, man. If this was a tax law, I'd give you an opinion, but right now I'm just taking notes and listening. So a couple things that came to that is the plaintiff, Mr. Eichelman, I think is how you say his last name, who owns Iron Bar Holdings. He has until June 16th to officially file for the U.S. Supreme Court to hear this. Whether or not he'll do that, I don't know. All of them, not all, but the majority, at least that I heard there, speculated that he would probably do that. He's really got nothing to lose other than more money, and he's got enough money that if he incurs another $500,000 in legal fees, it's kind of the rounding error in his coffee budget or something.
I can relate to that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we all can. So most of them were of the opinion that he will appeal it. There wasn't a lot of consensus one way or the other of whether or not the U.S. Supreme Court would take it, which if they don't take it, then the 10th Circuit Court opinion stands. So that's one thing. Then we got into the real gritty details of, okay, what precedent did it establish? Where, how far? Well, what everybody agreed on is in the 10th Circuit, which is Wyoming, Colorado, parts of Kansas, parts of Oklahoma, I think Utah, possibly New Mexico. I'd have to look at a map of the 10th Circuit, but in the 10th Circuit, corner crossing in the instance of this same fact pattern is now legal. Like anybody who would try to say otherwise, say a county attorney or a sheriff's deputy or someone tried to issue you a ticket, it's like, you're crazy, man. But I raised my hand. I'm like, tell me what you mean when you say exact fact pattern.
No.
They're like, well, here's some things to think about. And this is where attorneys, they always are like, it depends. They sound like accountants or a politician. Like, well, it depends.
If somebody's going to jail, it's the client.
That you remember when I said that, yeah. So they said, well, this case and the way it was decided, and the way it was defended, is pretty much 100. I'm overstating. They didn't say it this way. Is heavily focused and based on what the court found as it relates to the UIA, the Unlawful Enclosures Act, which is a federal law. And in this case, it was hunters going from a federal section to a federal section, right at the corner where it intersects. They made absolutely certain to bring a ladder. They identified the corner pin, and they put a ladder there, and they climbed over. They did not touch one single square inch of the neighbor's property that was on each side of them as they were climbing over. I'm like, well, that's a pretty precise fact pattern. You know what? Well, what if you're going from state to state or state to federal or back from federal to state? Like, that's a different fact pattern. I'm like, well, you guys aren't helping me. You're just creating more bigger questions for me. So they thought it was interesting that the court said this is civil trespass. Stepping over at this corner is civil trespass. But it's to the, and this is attorneys identifying like degrees of damage. The courts, and there's a legal concept called a nuisance. In other words, yeah, it's happening, but it doesn't hurt you. So just shut up and like it. So they've said that the court kind of came to the conclusion that even though this is civil trespass, it is nothing more than a nuisance because you're the one who tried to block the public from getting in there anyhow. They didn't damage it. The damages are zero. So
how is it civil trespass? Like, that's what constitutes civil trespass?
Civil trespass is, criminal trespass is the state passes a law that says this is a crime. We define what a crime is. Civil trespass is over in the area of civil law. And a tort, a claim against someone who damages you is where civil law comes in. And that's all based on case law and history and legal theory and everything else. And so...
But it's an allegation. It's an allegation of civil trespass. It's not actually civil trespass. They didn't actually trespass.
Well, they did. According to the court, they said, yes, we agree this is trespass, which to me is like, oh, no.
Yeah.
They trespassed. So in a civil case, I'm suing you or you're suing me. If you think about the O.J. Simpson trial, right? He was, for anyone who, I'm old now, I'm aging myself. But anyhow, O.J. Simpson was acquitted of the criminal crimes of murder, manslaughter, whatever it would have been. Can't remember what the charges were. But the family of the survivors of the deceased, the people who were murdered, said, we're still going to file a civil claim. And they prevailed on a civil claim. So you have criminal law, civil law. And in most instances of a lot of legal disputes, there is a definition of what's a crime. And then there's a definition of, have I been damaged? Have you done something that damages me? So the court said, yeah, under all these legal theories, this is criminal, or this is civil trespass. But it's a nuisance. The damages are zero, and you were trying to exclude them, and they went through this whole thing about the Unlawful Enclosures Act, all these cases, all these old cases about, it used to be, before they fenced everything, that if you wanted to get your sheep, and one of these is a sheep case, where the owner of the sheep herd said, I want to go graze that public land out there. I got to cross about 3 private miles of checkerboard here. And I'm going to do that with a couple thousand sheep. And the dude who owned the property was like, you can't do that. I'm going to fence you out. Well, he lost. You can't, back in that case, you couldn't fence him out. You had to let that guy take his, couple thousand sheep out to the public. And so it's really fascinating to read all these court cases and hear these attorneys interpret it. But the sum of it was that the court said, yeah, even if this is civil trespass through the airspace, not on the ground, but through the airspace, it's a nuisance. It's kind of like, the kid who kicked his football over into your yard. He runs over and grabs a football. He didn't. Yeah, he's quote unquote civilly trespassed because he came there without your permission and you own that ground or that airspace, but your damage is zero. It's a nuisance, you know. So
does a private landowner own the airspace above their land?
That's what's been in argument, and this court seemed to agree with a lot of the prior cases that said, yes, that is the case.
Because I've heard you can fly a drone over private land without consequence. So how is that?
That is, I mean, drones are a new thing, right?
Yeah, I know.
And there's going to be a whole series of law about that. So the FAA actually had to get
involved in
the
that
business of regulating airspace, because when a lot of this law evolved in the late 1800s, Orville and Wilbur, the Wright brothers, hadn't invented an airplane yet. And no one ever dreamed that people would be flying passengers and cargo and other stuff and buzzing down over your property and waking you up at, early hours. So we had to have this evolving just body of law related to airspace. And so it was really interesting to sit through it. And none of them were willing to really give hard opinions one way or the other. They all did say, you know what, if you were my client and you said, all right, I drew an elk tag in Colorado or Wyoming or any of the 10th Circuit states, and you were going to corner hop or two federal corners, whether Forest Service or BLM, bad up, and you told me you found that corner and you brought a ladder and you stepped over that, I'd say, knock yourself out. Take some pictures to make sure that you can show the court what you did. But right now, until the Supreme Court rules otherwise, you're good to go. I'd defend you to the end of time.
But make sure you have a stable ladder. You don't want the ladder tipping over when you're halfway up there, because then you're on the wrong side. Make sure it's federal to federal. Make sure you know where the pin is, and then make sure you document it.
Yep. So, which then led to the whole series of questions. It's like, hey, folks, we're all meeting here in the 9th Circuit in Montana. How do things work out here? And that opened up a whole nother can of worms. They're like, wow, there are states in the 9th Circuit that have different state law than Wyoming. And we think the courts would rule differently based on that state law. And the circuit court judges of the 9th Circuit are far more, they had a term, it's like traditionalist or constructionalist or whatever. In other words, they look at what the Constitution and the body of law is, and they just stay within that. They don't go out and create any new legal theories. They thought that if this case would have went through the 9th Circuit, the likelihood of success for the hunters would have been much less. They weren't willing to say it wouldn't have. Yeah. So I'm like, all right, you have no idea how many phone calls, emails, and people stop me on the street. Going corner crossing this year? And I'm like, well, until I know for sure it's legal in the 9th Circuit, I'm probably not. I got enough other places I can go without having to do that. So their comment was, based on how many people you say are going to do that this year in the 9th Circuit, which is Montana, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, Nevada, California, and I think Arizona and Alaska. They're like, there's probably going to be a lot of cases. If you were an aggressive prosecutor, you could probably find someone who didn't really cover the details. Like, that's close. I can't find the corner, but that's close enough.
Found the fence corner.
Found a fence corner, but not an official monument marker of what the corner, the survey marked corner officially is. They're like, the risk that recreationists face is they take a case or create a case in the 9th Circuit that is a much weaker case. They said this case that these hunters put together from Missouri, the guys from Missouri who came to Wyoming, like, if we were going to create a case to defend, this is a better case than we probably could have dreamed up.
Yeah.
So the risk we run, and this is attorneys talking, is stay in hunting season in Montana. All these Montana hunters go corner crossing and they just aren't real detailed about it. And they're in a different circuit and they're in a different state. And they find an aggressive prosecutor who says, yeah, I know what they said in the 10th Circuit, but this person here did not find the corner. I know they rode their mountain bike across there, or their e-bike, or they drove their ATV or something across that corner. Well, that's way different than crossing on a ladder where you don't touch anything. And so they said as many people as are probably going to be doing it, there's going to be ample opportunity for some really bad cases to be picked up.
And then they pick those up and they try them and they find out that they were in violation. And then that becomes the precedence for the rest of us.
Right. So that was kind of their warning and caution. And I'm like, you still aren't answering my questions. They're like, well, first of all, you're not our client. We're in a class here where no one's going on the record to tell you this for sure. But if I learned anything from it, it's if you're going to do it in the 10th Circuit. I mean, this is Randy, the accountant, who is always like
not giving legal advice,
right? But even for my own situation, I'm a pretty conservative guy. I'm not going to do it in the 9th Circuit right now. If I was to do it in the 10th Circuit, I would only do it if I could replicate the same exact fact pattern that those guys did. Yeah. I would know there's a corner there. I would have a ladder. And some people would say, you're crazy, you're chicken shit. But I wouldn't go from state to state because the Unlawful Enclosures Act, on which this entire case seemed to be argued, predicated, is a federal law.
Yeah.
Does not apply to private lands or state lands. So for whatever that's worth, it was really, really good to go to that class. In fact, we went out for dinner afterwards. I did with a bunch of the attorneys who were really in on that section and taught that section. And it was really, really helpful.
That's cool.
Yeah, I can't believe they invited me there for free.
I can't either.
I hope they're not listening, but I had to pay $500 for that kind of advice from a bunch of attorneys debating with each other and asking questions. It was fascinating.
Yeah.
And I learned a ton, but when you think about what little an accountant knows about law, if you absorb a few things, you've learned a ton, right? Relative to what your true knowledge is.
Well, and I think that's, an accountant, I think, probably knows more about law than the average person like myself. So for us, even to hear these conversations is super helpful because, for most of us, we hear corner crossing 1. The guys who corner crossed 1, now it's legal everywhere. Yeah. And that's not the case. Just because something's tried in a court of law and they prevail in it, certainly it doesn't become a law then. It doesn't become, hey, everybody can go and do this. Yeah. There's a lot to consider there.
Yeah. So I asked them, what does that mean in other places? They said, well, it's not, the terms that they use is it's not precedent, but the court can choose to use it as persuasive.
Yeah.
If the facts and circumstances are similar or the same. So that's a whole lot of, sounds like punting.
There was good stuff right there. So you brought up something else earlier, film permits. Mm-hmm. Where are film permits at? Has anything changed on that front?
Last winter sometime it was, Congress passed a bill called, I think it was like the Explore Act. And the BLM, Department of Interior, had gotten sued under the First Amendment for restricting a constitutional right.
Yeah.
Under the First Amendment, it was the right to free speech. And that court cases have said, well, that's news, that's this, it's media, it's entertainment. There's a whole ton. But the umbrella of what has grown to be free speech under the First Amendment is really, really wide. So it was called the Price case. I think it was like 2019 or 20. Department of Interior arrested a guy and fined him for filming on Department of Interior lands. And he went to the court. He prevailed, and then it got overturned. But they realized they had a pretty big weak spot there. And then one of the committees said, "Hey, are we making any money on these film permits? Give us the economics." And they're like, "Well, funny you should ask. We lose a lot of money on film permits because by the time we have the archaeologists and we have the biologists and we have the 30 people review the film permit and go out there and do an inspection. No, no dinosaur bones out here where he or she's going to be, blah, blah, blah. They got however many thousands and thousands of dollars tied up in a film permit. They got rid of them. They said for people, for crews 5 and under, or, filming setups 5 and under, no longer need a film permit on federal land.
So any federal land, Department of Interior and Agriculture.
Yeah. So actually, I was asked to testify on a part of that bill that got rolled up into this. That was quite a few years ago. And I'm like, look, I don't mind paying my fee. Yeah. I'm using public land. Let me pay my fee. I've already paid at the time. I went through and added it up for whatever my testimony was. And I think I was like 12 or 13 years into this, and I was over $220,000 that I'd paid in film permit. And I'm like, I'm the public land guy. That's what I advocate for. I should pay a fee. But I gave some examples of how, sometimes they didn't have the resources to even process my permit, so I ended up eating a tag or whatever. And so I'm like, if this is the accountant wanting to maximize the greatest return on the investment of the government, why don't you just make this like I renew my truck registration every year? Yeah. Charge me, however many thousands of dollars it is. And then you have like way higher compliance. The total revenue you're going to get is way higher because most people are like, do I want to risk a fine for $1,000 or whatever? And so you're going to have way more revenue, and you don't have all of your resource people, all your real property specialists working on things like film permits that you only charge $2,000 for. That's what I testified. So as everything, when it goes through Congress, you never know what you're going to end up with. Like, what's Forrest Gump said? It's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. So I didn't even know that this was getting wrapped up in another bill. And I was too busy. I was on the road, and someone calls me, hey, the bill passed. It's going to get signed. So
there are no film permits on federal land.
Nope. So personally, I wish they would have went the route that I did or that I suggested.
Even like a stamp, a filming stamp, like a duck stamp or something.
And that anyone who's doing what we do who couldn't afford, $500 or $1,000 or whatever the number they would have set to go and film, well, you better go do something else then, because you're using a public resource. You should have to pay something.
The hard part is when you start separating, and social media really made it difficult to try to clamp down on it, because if you benefit from it, if you are compensated, it doesn't have to be financial compensation. If you benefit from it, you had to have a film permit. That's considered commercial at that point. And there's so many people that benefit, whether directly or indirectly, from posting something on social media. And so then it becomes, well, it's not just Randy who's making a living from media on YouTube or television. It is the regular guy who's just out, films a turkey coming in, and he shoots it with a shotgun and posts that video clip on social media and has a sponsor, has a camo sponsor or a boot sponsor or something.
Yeah.
He's commercially benefiting from that. And so it really became difficult to...
Yeah. Well, we think about it in the context of hunting.
Yeah.
And when I was preparing my testimony for that, I can't remember where I got a hold of the people, but what they were worried about, the hunting space is a fraction of public land users who were not getting film permits, like off-roaders, mountain bikers. You name it, campers, hikers. There were so many people who were just kind of giving the middle finger to the film permit process. And most of it came about, as you mentioned, with social media. So if you drew a pie diagram of how worried they were about hunters doing this compared to the bigger uses of society doing this, I don't even think we would have been a crumb in that pie from what they told me.
But it seemed like we were the ones that always got picked on.
Yeah.
It was a hunting community that always got picked on for not having film permits.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you ever hear of a mountain biker or a hiker or a dog walker or someone peddling, camping gear. You never heard about that. I mean,
Nope.
So yeah, it's kind of a weird transition. It ended up where I didn't see it going. But it is, is what it is. And who knows, get a different group of people in Congress and maybe they'll be like, well, we're only going to apply film permits to hunting because we don't like hunting. I shouldn't say that. That'll start some conspiracy rumor. So a lot of people might be asking, what does this have to do with elk hunting? Well, it has nothing to do with elk hunting, but it has everything to do with elk hunting.
Absolutely.
In a lot of ways. The point of all this is Congress is doing things every day that affect elk hunting in some way, shape, or form based on what they do or what they don't do. Like there's a lot of things they say, no, we're not going to do that. Well, that affects us in some way. If they,
and they are in their conversation, elk hunting isn't brought up. It's not it's not a discussion point, but it affects us for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So I go back there a lot and I know of 2 elk hunters in the U.S. Senate. And I think if I had to go to the House, so the Senate's 100 members, the House is 435 members. I think I only know of 2 elk hunters in the House. There might be more, but yeah. What's that? Up in your part of the world, Representative Mike Simpson,
mm-hmm.
He's been killing it, man. He's been...
He got on the right side and got aligned, and he's standing up for public land.
Yeah, my congressman, Ryan Zinke, him and a Democrat from New Mexico, Vasquez, just last week formed what they call the Public Land Caucus. And they went and found 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats and said, you know what? Public lands have never really been this political football. We're here to try to keep it from being a political football. And your congressman there in Northern Idaho, is he your guy? Does his district go down to you?
I don't think so, no.
Okay. But anyhow, Mike Simpson has been really great on this stuff. Congressman Zinke in Montana has been really great on it. There's a bunch of Vasquez has been really good on it.
There's 4 or 5 of them that have been really involved and kind of at the forefront of it.
Mm-hmm. So this is where we're going to find when the rubber meets the road on this Public Land Caucus. Their first test of whether or not this was political posturing or are we for real is going to come here in a few weeks when the House final budget is there. Are they going to let the amendment to sell public lands in Nevada and Utah stay in there? Or are they going to put their own amendment forward that says we want this taken out? Because we're still in that process where amendments can be submitted and the House votes. Yeah, take it out or put it in or whatever. Or if there's something already in there, we can pull it out. So if you just do math, I'm kind of good at math as an accountant, but in the House, we got 220. We got 220 Republicans, where most of the sell the land stuff comes from. We got 213 Democrats, and someone's automatically saying, "Well, wait, that's only 433. What happened to the other 2? Well, they've died since the new Congress got in. That should be an indicator right there that maybe too many people in Congress are too damn old. Get them, you shouldn't." I know this sounds terrible. We don't need to have a discussion
on age limits, but
anyhow. So right now, the Democrats, 2 of their people have died. So instead of having 215 votes, they got 213. So if you just do the math right now, if those 10 Republicans, 8 or 10 and whatever it is, on the Public Land Caucus said, you know what? We don't like that. We're going to join the Democrats to ask that be removed. They could get it removed. So
this is a big, not to divide it politically, but this is a big one side of the aisle that doesn't make sense. Mm-hmm. That it's the Republicans who are supporting selling the public lands.
Yeah. And this week, people got to think I'm schizophrenic or something. I'm over there praising the Republicans for the suppressor silencer act. I'm like, yeah, come on, let's go. And I'm over here criticizing the Democrats on that. Like, hey, you got a Democrat in your district, tell them to lighten up on this. Or you got a Republican, an urban Republican who's on the wrong side. Get their butt over here to the right side.
Yep.
On a Second Amendment / gun issue. it's almost like a mirror. Now, the next day, I'm engaged in public land stuff, and it's like...
And what's crazy about all of it is neither of those issues should be attached to a budget item anyway.
No, they should not.
Suppressors, as much as I would love for that to go through, the budget bill isn't the place to get it to go through, because again, you're just sneaking it on there, hoping that they say, we've got to approve this budget. We've got to have money to go forward. Let's just vote on this. And that's not a big deal. So let's just do it. And that's what they're hoping for. They just add these riders on there, these amendments that have nothing to do with budget, just to sneak something in there and get their agenda through.
Yeah, that's why back there they call it the Christmas tree.
No.
Because it's got all kinds of stuff hanging off it that, okay, you got a tree. But then a tree's a tree, but then you got tinsel and you got the lights, and it looks like a really poorly, I guess, decorated Christmas tree.
Yeah, you're so focused on your one ornament that's hanging on there, you don't realize all the other stuff that people have added to it.
Yeah. So, but the point of all this is it really affects our public land, our access, our conservation. Like, I look at all these things, and I've done a bunch of videos about if we're really interested in getting better returns on federal lands, which I am, and I've been promoting this for years, I can give you a list of things that would raise billions and billions of dollars every year.
Yep.
But then you guys who want to get rid of the public lands come and start cutting everything. Instead of raising revenues from these companies that use public land, you keep giving them the freebies or the subsidies, and then you want to cut everything over here that affects hunters and access and conservation
users. Yeah,
yeah, it's really weird. It's hard to stay calm sometimes, but I have.
Yeah. Hey, we got a question from a listener that kind of ties into a lot of this discussion we've had, and I think it'd be good to read it. But it says, first of all, thank you for the podcast. Appreciate the knowledge and laughs you bring to the community. One question I have, and I hope you can maybe clarify, is on one side, we say we want to increase access by purchasing or donating land and giving it to the state or federal agencies to include in their management, for example, the RMEF.
Yep.
This, in turn, I would assume, means less taxes being collected as the property gets transferred from the public to the state federal.
No.
On the other side, we continue to say that our state federal agencies don't have enough, or their budgets continue to get diminished to be able to manage these properties, even more so with recent changes. Hence, if the amount of property that has to be managed is increasing, assumingly, but yet the funds to manage them stay the same or decrease, then how can we expect that to be sustainable in the long term?
Yeah. Well, I can see where the question comes from, but it's based on some incorrect premises. The federal government pays property taxes in two manners. The Department of Interior and a few other places pay property taxes to local county governments through a program called PILT, Payment in Lieu of Taxes. So that's how the federal government, for Department of Interior and a few other places, pays their taxes. Forest Service pays their taxes under a thing called Secure Rural Schools, SRS. So both of those have formulas to say, here's how much we should owe in property taxes. But then Congress is like, well, yeah, we see that, but we're not going to pay that much. So the only reason that it reduces tax rolls would be as if your congressperson decides they don't want to pay their fair share of property taxes. And here's the irony
just to clarify, the federal government, whether it's BLM or Forest Service,
U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service,
they have to pay the state a fee, or the county. Usually. Okay, so they pay the county a fee for all of the land that they own within that county?
Yep.
Based on some formula
for it.
Okay.
Yeah, they're supposed to. But for many years, there's been times where Congress is like, they kind of made me mad over there. I'm not funding that fully. Like, really? And you wonder why rural county commissioners hate the feds?
No.
They should hate Congress. And who do they yell and scream at? They yell and scream at the guy working at the Forest Service office or the guy working at the BLM office. You guys didn't pay your share of taxes. Call your congressperson. And here's the irony of all that. And this won't be surprising when I say it. Every time Congress votes to not fully fund or extend or do the necessary things under SRS or PIL, the people who lead the charge on that are the same ones who want to sell your public lands, who say that the federal lands are blah, 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 and they're the problem, because they want to foster a lot of frustration out there in the public land, the rural public land world. So to this listener's question, if Congress does their job, the federal government pays property taxes. And in most instances that I'm aware of, in my state of Montana, state agencies have to pay, like Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks has to pay property taxes on the lands that they own and administer. So what the premise of the question, when he said, but those reduce the tax rolls, that but is not correct so long as Congress does their job. Yeah.
So I guess, it brought up, and for me, I think that, when we look at how many millions of acres the federal government owns.
Yep.
And if we were to take private land and we get a 400-acre piece of private land that becomes a conservation easement or gets donated to an organization that provides it back to the public land pool, it's a drop. It's a drop in the bucket. Right. That's not even for us to think, oh, we aren't going to be able to manage all of the public lands now because we don't have the budget to do it. It's not going to contribute to that issue as much. And I'm sure that a private landowner pays a higher percentage of tax to a county or to a state than the federal government does. They probably get some massively reduced rate. But still, there's money there to manage that in the budget if the system's working correctly.
If Congress does their job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if anyone's mad that the federal government hasn't paid enough in property taxes, Congress is your problem. No. And here's the other worry. SRS, Secure Rural Schools, just expired. So why they put a sunset on some of these when, if you're a county and you're trying to provide government services and some of that gets split with the school systems in the county, you would like to have a federal government that is consistent, reliable, and dependable? Not if you're in Congress.
No.
It's head shaking to me. And so I brought it up when I was back there last month. I'm like, hey, where are we at on SRS? And it's like everyone had a mouthful of marble. Well, it's got tariffs and good. It's like, if I'm a school district board trustee or I'm a county commissioner out here, I need to know that you guys are going to keep your end of the deal.
No.
And this is where I know people get tired of me saying this, but we give Congress a free pass on everything. If Congress were a board of directors, that company would have been bankrupt a long time ago, and every one of those would have been sued by the shareholders for dereliction of their duty.
Yeah.
But
and when you go back to meet with Congress again, Randy?
Yeah. Well, they all know. That's why I can't get any of them to come on a podcast anymore. A bunch of chicken shits. But so, and people are probably saying, Newberg's going off the rails here. But I use these things because they all play into the bigger game, right? If you had what I call the anti-public land caucus instead of the public land caucus, that anti-public land caucus is who tries to defund these rural counties.
Yeah.
Well, if I'm a county commissioner, I'm going to be frustrated about that. So this person's question, I get where he's coming from, but there are mechanisms in place where Congress is supposed to pay a certain amount, and it's a formula. The other part of it, he kind of implies that private lands are taxed at really high dollar amounts.
Right.
In the West, they're not. Every Western state I'm aware of has an ag exclusion or an agricultural classification that is based on how much that land produces, not how much it's worth. So I got a lot of ranch clients and had a lot of ranch clients as a CPA. I can go to any county in Montana, it's all online. I can go and see how much any ranch pays for taxes in Montana. Like sometimes I'll see a ranch for sale for $30 million and I'll be like, I wonder what they pay for property taxes. Go look it up. Oh, wow, they paid $9,000 in property taxes on a $30 million ranch.
And somebody that lives in a city, on a quarter acre.
Yeah. This office building, I pay $11,000 in property taxes. And so when people say, oh, if you do a conservation easement or you do this, it's going to take all this land off the tax rolls. Bull crap.
Yeah.
Go try to, you may be able to pitch that falsehood to someone who doesn't know better. But those of us who are accountants who help our clients get these ag classifications, I couldn't come up with a conservation easement restrictive enough to get the property value down to what the ag classification gives me.
Yep.
And so this whole idea that, it takes private land out of the tax base, they don't know what they're talking about.
Especially those big pieces. Yep.
Yeah. So anyhow, these are all public land policy things. Conservation easements are one of our best tools to keep private landowners from subdividing and keep them on the land. And so a lot of stuff there.
So how would somebody like myself get a hold of my Congress representative and make sure that they know that I do not want them passing a budget bill that has that selling public land amendment attached to it?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. Google's your friend. How do I contact my member of Congress? You're going to get the very first thing that pops up is it's contactcongress.gov or something. It's a government website. You go to the landing page and it says, type in your zip code. And you type in your zip code. Hopefully you know your zip code. If you're getting mail, I'm sure you know your zip code. And it'll say, here's your 2 senators and here's your congressperson. Do you want to contact them? Here's all their contact information. You click the link that says, email my congressperson, and you just write exactly what Corey just said.
Yep. So I just, while we're sitting here, I did a search for who is my Congress representative. It comes up with congress.gov, and it takes you to congress.gov/members/find your member. And just like Randy said, the first thing that comes up on that page is find your members. Says find address or place. So I'm just going to put in my zip code, hit search, your possible members. Yep. So I've got my 3 state representatives.
Yeah.
In the House.
2 senators and a House
and the Senate. Yep.
Yeah. All you got to do.
So got them right there. A link to contact them. Their phone number is there. A link to contact by email. Yeah. So that's how you do it. Just go to congress.gov or just do a search for who is my Congress representative. It'll pop up, enter your zip code in there, send them an email and just say, I want to make sure that you realize that I am not supportive of selling public lands, and I do not approve of the budget bill being passed with that amendment attached to it.
Yep.
Your voice matters. Your voice
it
matters.
Absolutely does. I mean, when I was back there, and every time I go back there, when I meet with staffers out here, they're like, we haven't hardly heard from any hunters on this. And I'm just like, I got to do a better job. I got to figure out how to get my audience more engaged, more motivated. I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I got to give them free dilly bars or something, or whatever it's going to take. So it matters. And here's sometimes when it matters even more is if you voted for the person, they're going to be more inclined to listen to you than they are the person who they get an email a day from this person saying, you're a dirty, rotten, blah, 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 blah. Be polite. Be professional, be persistent. The 3 Ps of communicating with your representatives or your elected officials: polite, persistent, professional. And you'll be amazed at how much influence you will have. So, but this is not where I thought our conversation was going this morning, Corey.
Well, I mean, it's good and it's relevant for right now because everything you're seeing on social media in the news is we've got to protect our public lands. Our public lands are under attack right now, and I think they were under attack, and we kind of thought it kind of went away, and then all of a sudden it got added back in here. What was it? Utah, I think, withdrew their proposal to try to steal a bunch of public land.
Yeah. With the Supreme Court tossed that. Oh, that was another breakout. There was 2-hour breakout session of that, of the Utah effort. The land belongs to the state and it's unconstitutional. All the attorneys just tore that apart. Utah has zero chance of prevailing in that lawsuit.
That's
and
good.
any other state that joins with them, all these attorneys are like, really what this was a cheap marketing scheme by getting it out in the press, getting it out in front of everybody. And it's a marketing scheme to start softening up the beachheads to do this legislatively.
Yeah.
Because they don't stand a chance legally. Not a chance.
Well, it's probably not a coincidence that came up, and then here we are a month or two later, and we've got an amendment going on to a bill trying to do it in another state.
Yep. Yeah. So after that morning session of corner crossing and then the sale of the public land thing, I kind of asked some questions. I'm like, so what you're telling me is the way I should let my audience know this is the legality of federal ownership of public land is Loctite. It's never been challenged. It will never be challenged under quote unquote constitutional ground. They're like, yes, that is correct. This is a waste of anyone's money. If it was incorrect, we wouldn't be 250 years into our republic before someone decided it was unconstitutional. I'm like, so it seems to me then that this is more of a public relations campaign to try create a political movement. And they all just kind of smiled and looked at each other like, jackpot.
Well said. Yeah.
So that's what it is. All this stuff. So for me, I'm like, okay, I can quit worrying about the legal part of it.
Yeah.
I got to worry about Congress changing the laws that currently allow it and have been in place for 250 years. And for them to say, well, if we can't change the law to say it's illegal for the federal government to hold and have land, then we better figure out a way to get them to give their land to us as states or to give it, sell it on the cheap to other people. And so that's part of the process of what they're doing. And I wish it wasn't that way, Corey. We got so many things I'd rather be working on. I'd rather be working on habitat and access and everything else. But right now, when it comes to public land, like Senator Heinrich told me in the podcast I did with him, he said, the downside is we have to win every time something comes up. Because if we lose one, you don't get that land back, whether it's 1,000 acres, 100,000 acres, or 1 million acres. We are not getting that back. Whereas the other side, they can lose 99 times, but if they just win once, they got a big victory.
Yep. And I think that's why it's so important. We've been so just apathetic and defensive. We've always waited till we're attacked and then we'll speak up. And it's so important that we get ahead of the curve on this and start being proactive and putting things in place to not only, education is so important. And I think that our platform, it's helpful for me. You're such a wealth of this kind of knowledge that it gets me excited to get involved because you're able to dissect it down and say, this is where you go, this is what you do. We haven't had that for a long time. And we've just been kind of, we wait until it's on the news that, hey, this sold. And it's like, wait, what? This makes me mad. And I get mad and I rant on social media for 6 months that should have never happened. And then all of a sudden something else comes up. So I think it's important for us to have that education and stay in front of it and get involved because, yes, find your representatives and let them know. Because that's the only way we have a chance of stopping things like this.
Yeah. And so the other day, some young person was railing on me. My team does our social media, so I don't really... It's like Instagram. Yeah, okay. Tell me what I got to do, Michael. Someone was giving me the hard ride of that I'm a Johnny come lately to this, and just in the last little while, I took interest in it. And I'm, wow, okay. I was involved in land exchanges starting in the early 90s. Went to Congress in 98. But okay, if that's just kind of a Johnny come lately, all right. But the way that it was being, the way I decided I should reply to this, as I said, none of the big conservation groups are concerned about this. Where's RMEF? Where's Wild Sheep Foundation? Where's Boone and Crockett? Where's blah, blah, blah. I'm like, hey, all of them have issued statements about public land. May 7th, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation seeing this. There's like, okay, we've been doing all of our stuff behind the scenes. We've been doing all the stuff with there's a big umbrella group they all belong to called AWCP, American Wildlife Conservation Partners. That's kind of the tool that that and Congressional Sportsman Foundation, they are there every day doing stuff. So Wild Sheep Foundation comes out with a similar statement. Hey, we do all of our habitat work on public land. Selling this is not what we're in favor of. Boone and Crockett Club comes out with a statement last month. Hey, in 1887, when we founded this outfit, one of our founders is this guy named Theodore Roosevelt. He's the one who started all this public land stuff. We're not in favor of this stuff. And this person is like saying that all the hunting groups are quiet.
Yeah.
Just because they don't come across your whatever feed.
Or because your head's buried in the sand doesn't mean nobody else can hear them.
Yeah. So my point of all that is all of the groups in the hunting space are taking this seriously.
Yeah.
They may not be the ones screaming and yelling and walking up and down the street with a sign, but they are using their relationships. They're using their members. They're using, some of their donors to say, hey, you kind of know this guy or this congresswoman. You mind making a phone call? So there's so much of it that's going on there. The last thing we need is for hunters to invest energy arguing who isn't doing enough.
Yeah.
Because I can tell you, every group I am aware of is working either in front of the scenes or behind the scene to convince Congress that this is bad.
Yep. And I'd hope that person that questioned you and questioned all these other groups actually took the time to make a comment themselves and to reach out to their representative. I would hope that at the very minimum they would do that. But I see so many comments on social media that they just want to attack other people and they don't actually want to get involved in the proactive, positive side of it.
Yeah, I'm going under the assumption that this person had. If they're engaged and involved, they seem to be aware of the issues. I'm pretty sure they probably did. But, the bigger thing that we're going to be able to measure in this when all the dust settles with this budget process is where has public land, public access, hunting, and conservation, how far down the priority list in D.C. has it fallen?
Yeah.
Because I get it. There are other issues. There's defense and there's tariffs and there's taxes and there's spending and, there's a bajillion other things. But historically, our issues have, like public land. You poll any American, do you like America having public lands? In the high 80% will say, yes, I don't want Congress screwing with that. And that's kind of been enough to push back the craziness. But here's where we find ourselves. So it's here. It's real. It's not made up. It's not manufactured. And we're going to find out. I hope what we find out is all the hunters and anglers and public land people do just what you said. Get a hold of your congressperson.
Yep.
And let them know, hey, I might have voted for you, but I did not vote for this. Okay? I'm with you on whatever other issues might be, but this is this could be the end of your political career. You don't have to say,
don't even take it that way. I think that they're not going to get a whole bunch of emails from people patting them on the back saying this is the right thing, take public land away. So if they get a whole bunch of emails, if 80% of the emails they receive are, hey, please don't do this. Public land's important to me, and this is gonna affect us, especially in the future. Don't vote for the budget bill if the public land amendment is attached to it. Just make sure that gets removed. They hear enough of that, and they're probably gonna follow that.
So a lot of people, when I do that, I say, well, we're going to find out where this ranks in a priority. They're like, well, we'll find out. I'm like, if we don't take action, we're going to find out that it's a low priority. But here's the beauty of what we have right now. We can engage. We can make a difference. We can move that up the priority list. And the crazies who came up with this idea are going to be taken out back to the woodshed and say, where did you come up with this stupid idea? You know how many emails and phone calls? Yeah. Wait, what the hell were you thinking?
And it's never been easier in the history of the world to contact your representatives. And I mean, 2 minutes, you can contact all three of them or however many you have in your state, send them an email, type out an email once, copy and paste it, send it to all three of them, and you're done. Where it used to be, you have to sit down and dip your feather in a thing of ink and write it on a paper and stamp it and seal it and wait for the Pony Express to deliver it. And I mean, it's never been easier to have your voice heard and to be active in this. So hopefully everybody listening will, at the end of this, click on that link, find who you need to contact, compose a nice email, and send that.
Yeah. Compose your nice email. And everyone wants to be on the winning side. And this is our chance to be on the winning side. If every public land user, if all of our listeners went and talked to a few of their friends, we would be dunking on these folks. They'd be like, oh, man, I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah.
This is our chance to win. This is our chance to tell them this is a stupid idea, crawl back in the hole, tear up that game planning, and get on with the business of running a government. This is our chance.
Yep.
If we just go down to the coffee shop and complain, we're going to end up with a government that we're going to earn it. So I'm pretty excited. I mean, people think
you've been fired up for an hour and a half here. This is an important thing.
Yeah, and the reason I'm excited is I am convinced that we have this, as much as everyone wants to see it as doom and gloom, I see it as this is our opportunity to plant the stake and say, you are trying to cross a line here that is not going to work. And we'll see if it happens. I'm convinced we're going to knock it out of the park, dunk on them, spike the ball in the end zone, whatever sports analogy you want to use. And that's my hope. So
awesome.
Let's do it. Let's go elk hunting.
Let's go. Here we go. Break. Speaking of elk hunting, we sold out our elk camp events.
You did?
Yeah.
Dang.
First day. Yeah, both of them sold out.
You doing it over by your place again?
We are, yeah. And we mentioned it in the last podcast or maybe 2 podcasts ago. And we had multiple listeners who signed up for the priority registration list and got on it and were able to sign up and attend. So looking forward to meeting some of our listeners in person.
Yeah, well, that's cool. When is that? July?
July 28th, the first one, and then July 31st is the second one. So
yeah, I'll be in Minnesota then, fighting mosquitoes and humidity.
Yeah.
Yeah, but have fun.
We'll be sleeping in Peaks teepees in the mountains.
Well, there you go.
A month before elk season, so
I hope
be on our minds.
Everyone who attends, I hope Peaks gives them promo code Elk Talk to save a bunch of money on those teepees.
That's right.
That's what I'm sleeping in the next 4 days, 5 days.
And you're having llamas pack it in for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm not of that. Vanity for me is like. No one's going to think a 60-year-old accountant. The expectations of what my physical fitness is pretty low based on my age, my profile, everything else. So,
well, until you started doing Mountain Tough, you were probably even a little bit below your expectations.
Probably, yeah. Yeah, they associated me with Dairy Queen, not Mountain Tough.
Exactly.
If you got llamas, man, you can pack in everything. I might bring a blueberry pie and who knows what else. I don't know. Bring in coffee and
I wouldn't bring a blueberry pie on a bear hunt.
No, Yogi and Boo Boo probably come to get it.
Unless you're baiting, which I don't think is legal in Montana. So
no, it's not. And there are grizzly bears where we're going, so don't need that problem.
Yeah.
So, but anyhow,
cool.
Have we done anything worthwhile today?
I think we have. I hope we have. I hope that people take action today when they listen to this, not put it off and not say, I forgot to do it. But if you're listening on your phone, if you're listening on a computer, wherever you're listening, take 2 minutes and go and take some action. Yeah, we better move this one up the calendar and try to get it turned around as quick as possible, I think. Yep. So that otherwise the budget
will have already been voted on, and people will be like, now you tell me.
Yeah, no kidding. Yep.
But I'll talk to Joe. I'll tell him, drop what you're doing. Be like, I got 14 other podcasts here, Randy. What's the deal?
Hey, sorry. This one's important.
Because I want to make sure that our public lands don't get sold, and kind of down that list also, I want to make sure that I can go down to the gun shop and buy a suppressor without having to give blood.
Yeah.
But for anyone wondering, Corey Jacobson knows I'm kind of like, he can play me like a dog. Like, I'm just going to lay these little bits of biscuit and puppy treat along the way, and Randy's going to follow my path, and I'm going to walk him right into it.
Yep. I know the triggers.
Sorry to be so predictable, folks, but just the way I am.
But I just think, application season's just about over. Idaho's winding up here. We're going to start getting into, gear and shooting weapons and hunting strategies and everything. But right now, there's a lot going on in the legislation world that I think it's important to stay on top of.
Yeah. So, anyhow, you have a great day, Corey.
You do as well.
Appreciate your time. Yeah, I'm going to go look for some if I see any shed antlers on this bear hunt, I'll send you some waypoints.
Yeah. Just pick them up for me.
I'll hang them in a tree.
I was going to say, hang them in a tree and send me the waypoint for that. Start shed hunting, looking in trees.
Well, thanks for being here, folks. Hope you all have a great day. Make sure, do what Corey said, congress.gov. Contact your 2 senators and your representative.